back. We're so glad that you're able to join us again as we continue our discussion on power, money, and sex. Today, we're going to be talking about money, so you'll get a chance to eavesdrop a little bit on a girlfriend discussion as we talk about money. All right, stay tuned. So you guys tell me a little bit about yourselves. I guess as you share the answer to the question of how do you feel about money? Did you grow up having an allowance? What was money like in your household growing up? Anybody?
I'll start the conversation. So for me, growing up, I grew up in a single family home. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. So my mom basically worked 2 and 3 jobs to make sure that things were taken care of. So I didn't have an allowance, and my mother's mindset around money was, I just need to make enough money to pay the bills and make sure that my kids are clothed and fed. So we didn't talk about saving. We didn't talk about putting money aside for a rainy day. It was paycheck to paycheck.
Survival.
It was survival mode. So, so as I've kind of grown myself, one of the things that I've learned to do, and it took me a long time to break from that cycle, because I think it is a cycle that we all kind of go through. If you've grown up not having the money conversations or savings conversations, then you don't have that when you go off and you become an adult. So for me, it took me years to kind of break free from that cycle. And so I feel like I'm at the place now where I've been able to not only learn, but also teach some of those lessons to my own children. So,
What would you say was a turning point for you in that? Was there kind of like this moment where it was a turning point for you?
Yeah, I think for me, so I graduated with a degree in engineering. And so right after 9/11, I actually lost my job. And so in losing my job, I hadn't saved up for a rainy day. And so I foreclosed on my home, as well as my daughter and I were kind of living here and there until I was able to get back on my feet. And one of the things I prayed to God, I said, God, if you ever get me out of this situation, I will do this differently. And so I think at that point was when I began to look at money in view, or in the view of how God wants me to see money.
Good, good. Share a little bit about yourself, because I know you're newlywed.
I am. I am. I've been married. Actually, I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary last Sunday. And so my husband and I had dated for a long period of time. And so when I first met him, I was like, he's not quite my type, et cetera, et cetera. But he actually is the best thing for me. He provides a level of balance for me. We provide, I'm more headstrong and he's more laid back. So we balance each other out. He has a daughter from a previous relationship, and then I have a daughter. So we have 2 daughters. One is a freshman in college, and the other is a junior in high school.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else? Money in your household growing up?
My household was, I guess, what you would sometimes think of as most households, where one side is very money conscious and the other side is a spender.
Okay.
That was my household.
Yes.
My father, though, was the spender, and my mom was extremely money conscious, and came from a family that, of course, grew up around the Depression time, and so everything was saved. I, in my DNA, inherited both. My dad would buy whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, regardless of whether there were funds or not. My mom would not buy anything, and I had to grapple with seeing something that I liked, having the money to purchase it, but not knowing if I wanted to, because I also had that saving side. So as I got older, as an adult, I started to kind of shuffle through that and figure out what best fit me and learn how to deal with both. But I am thankful that I did grow up in a household where one parent was a saver. I definitely have a big part of that in me.
Yeah, tell us about your background a little bit.
Well, I'm single, and I have no children. So my whole financial life has been on me, essentially. I have an undergrad in engineering and an MBA. And I've lived in several states and moved around a bit, but now I'm finally back in North Carolina, so I'm really glad about that. I work for Fifth Third in their commercial banking department. So, and I've done that for years. But financial literacy and teaching people about their personal finances is a very strong passion of mine. Very strong.
Yeah. I shared on one of the tapings that we did that when I grew up, my parents were, well, my grandparents. I think it makes it easier to talk about my grandparents. My grandparents, my mother's parents were not educated, but very hard workers. Domestic work, farming, serving houses, that kind of work. And my father's family, a teacher and a policeman. And they pretty much grew up, my parents, not being able to have a lot. So I think my parents felt like once they could have something, they wanted to give their children everything. And that created an atmosphere of the value for things was very high because there were always things. And my father was a dentist, my mother was a teacher. And when we started having financial problems, my father didn't really share that information with my mom. And things got really bad. And so my mom picked up a second job, and she would teach during the day, and she would work 7-Eleven till close, just so we wouldn't lose the house, because she believed in working. But my mom was also a spender, and my dad was a spender. So again, there's no DNA here for this is how you prepare, this is how you save. So for me, it was difficult because I just really, as I grew in my faith life, had to pray and ask God to say, okay, Lord, help me to make my desires your desires, because things don't really provide any kind of support or help to you. They're just things. And God really has helped me with that. But it's been a long process. And I share a little bit about that on one of the videos that I do, so I'm not going to get into it too much because I want to hear a little bit more about you all. But I think it is a challenge because we grow up doing what we've seen. And, you know, for my dad to not always share, you know, information, even though he was having difficulty, you know, not wanting to share that information. And for my mom was such a shopper, you know, the clothes in the trunk, daddy at home, bring them out the trunk, running the house with the clothes. It's like, what? You know, hiding what she bought, what she spent money on. So, you know, seeing that and deciding I'm not doing that. It's been a real mind shift, and you're right, it takes years to begin to come up with some different patterns, and then to teach those patterns now to our children. What about you, Lisa?
Yes, so I grew up in a married home. My mother and father were there, and I think about the dynamics. My father was a saver, but not vocal. And that made a big difference. My mom was the spender and very vocal. So we saw her patterns, understood that if you wanted it, you buy it. Don't worry so much about the consequences. And so when I graduated from college, I thought work was to satisfy my desire for things. Did not have much of an understanding about, no, you also need to plan and prepare. But God is good. I met people along the way that intervened significantly so that little bit by little bit I could begin to change my patterns. I am married. I've been married for 15 years. We do have a daughter. And when my husband and I got married, I thought, oh, happy day. Now we can really spend some money. But it was just the opposite, because we both came in with our loans, our student loans, our car loans, our credit cards, and now we had to take that dysfunction and rename it and learn a way to rename it. And that's been our journey and our process. And much like you, Markeisha, September 11th, not only was it a very global issue, but it was a very personal issue for a lot of people. And it definitely changed my course at that time as well. As all of us watched the towers fall and then our financial system really crumble, kind of the same thing happened personally in my financial life. And that's when I really had to say, okay, God, I want to learn it your way and no other way, because nothing else works. I've had it every other type of way, and it simply does not work. And so that's been the major change and metamorphosis for us.
My parents got married when I was about 8. And so my mother was more of the free spirit, and my dad was more of the nerd. I learned more from him. I think I mimicked, because he was always on top of credit scores, credit reports. He had credit cards, so, he would charge something. He would make sure they would be paid off at the end of the month. If not, then the beginning of the next month, to where my mom was a little bit more, if I got it, I'm going to spend it. I think, it was, when she got paid, it was more hand over the money so he can do the bills. So, make sure everything could get taken care of. And I mimicked my dad. I've been married for 3 years, and we were able to take advantage of the financial peace class offered at the church. And that was very helpful because we were only married for 2 months when we took that course. And I remember it was so on time, because when we came back from our honeymoon, that's when things got very real.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were in this spare bedroom. We had all the bills on the floor. And I remember just being in tears because I could not understand how I bought so much debt and he bought so much debt. I had student loans, we had credit cards, and although I was on top, just when you put everything together, it becomes overwhelming. So for me, that class, and for him too, our whole marriage, it was just right on time, because we were able to, learn steps on how to control our money and not let our money control us. So that was it was such a blessing in our marriage, and even to this day, we take things and lessons that we learned from that and apply it, to our everyday life and dealing with money and our finances.
Dave Ramsey has this saying. It says you can either learn to manage money or the lack of money will manage you.
Absolutely.
And that is so true.
Yes.
I took that class, and it was life-changing for me. Financial peace, just to begin to get a handle on the emotional aspects for me, for spending. And in this book, Girl, Get Your Money Straight by Glenda Bridgeford, she talks about for money that for women, there's a close link between our emotions and how we feel about ourselves and how we effectively or ineffectively manage our finances. And because this part is mostly about women, I think it's important for us to talk about why is how we as women feel relevant to money management. And to make it real, I think I would get very upset when, being from Charlotte, I would hang out in Charlotte with girls that I've known all my life. And the first thing they want to know is what kind of purse you got. It's like the purse costs more than what you got in the purse. But that whole idea of having certain things so that you feel a certain way about yourself, for us as women, it's a challenge. So let's talk about that a little bit. Well, do you think that's true emotionally, how we feel about ourselves and how we manage our money are related?
Absolutely. We are bombarded constantly, especially as women, bombarded constantly with media, whether that's TV, radio, advertisements you see driving down the highway. With things making us feel better, or we deserve something, or that's a big one. You deserve this, so buy it, and give me your money is essentially what that's saying. And I would absolutely agree that because we've been under that influence since we could hear and see. That there is a part of us that attributes how we manage and deal with our money with how we feel about ourselves. And unfortunately, kind of the exact opposite is true, not the spending side that helps you feel better about yourself, because as Lady Kim said, you know, things are just things. But what does make you feel better is when you feel like you have more control over your money and your finances. Women especially, certainly more than our male counterparts, have a need for security. That's just part of who we are. And whether we like it or not, money is part of that. And feeling like you have no control over that also means like you feel like you have no control over your bills, over your rent, over your mortgage, over your car, over, you know, you just don't have any control there. And that can definitely weigh, whether it's a conscious knowing or subconsciously weigh on how you feel about yourself.
I definitely think that it's related to our image, our self-image. And so a lot of times as women, the reality is that we connect who we are, the internal with what we have. And until we come to the idea or the notion, and God reveals to us that things don't make us. None of those things will make you who you are supposed to be in Him. And so when we get to that place, you have this aha moment. Like, I don't need to have a $500 purse, and I don't have $500 to put in it. And I'm still special in God's eyes. I'm still somebody in His eyes. And I think once we get to that place, once you come to a healthy idea of who you are, you have a healthy self-esteem. I think the idea of money then becomes less of an issue for you, because then you understand who you are in Christ, and those other things are not as important anymore. So I definitely can relate to, you know, just the whole notion of, you know, getting out of college and going back to homecoming, or, you know, going somewhere with your friends, and, you know, everybody looking at what you have on or what you're carrying, and it's like, you know, do I really go out and spend all my money, and then when I come back from that trip, I'm sad, or, you know, I'm frustrated because I didn't do the things that I needed to do to pay bills, because I wanted to impress people that at the end of the day really don't really care. They really don't care, you know. But you're trying to impress them. And I think once we get to the point where we're like, you know what, I don't need to impress anybody. As long as I know that God is pleased with me, that's all that matters.
Just feeling good about who we are. And that's a process. I think you grow into that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that that's something that happens overnight.
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Certainly not, especially as Black women.
But I think it's one of the things that we have to teach our girls, though.
Exactly.
You know, because I wasn't taught. That wasn't something that was taught in my household. But one of the things I had to teach my own child is, you know, it doesn't matter what you have on, how much it costs, as long as it's clean.
That's right.
You know, and you have a positive self-image, it really doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that we have to be very mindful of and cognizant of with our girls, making sure that we do teach them and show them what a positive self-image is, minus the stuff.
Yeah, you have to help them reframe who they are. I tell my daughter all the time, you'll never have enough Barbies, you'll never have enough American Girls. You'll go to someone's house and they'll have more toys and more things than you, and that will always be the case. And then I realized that I had to start talking to her about what she does have. You have the love of Christ. You are mommy and daddy's star no matter where you are. We're always so proud of you. We're rich in God's love and His grace and His goodness. So I think we have to step on the other side of it, just like you were saying, and learn the process that shows us who we really are. And things will never make you who you are. And money, you have to begin to see money also as a tool. It's a tool for empowerment. It's not a tool to be used and manipulated by. And unfortunately, that's sometimes the behavior that we demonstrate. So it's definitely about reframing our mind about how we view money.
I want to go back to something Tamara said, because I think that there are two extremes that we get to when it comes to money. One is allowing it to define us, and the other, I think, has to do with this issue of security, so that if we equate money with security rather than our security and who we are in Christ, then we begin to amass money not just to spend it on things, but to have it so that we have security.
That's true.
And that's another side of the same problem. Because yes, we do need to have some savings. Yes, you do need to have an emergency fund, because emergencies will happen. But also, we need to not think that that money is our security. Eternal security, that we have security in Christ. And I think that that there are two sides to that I've seen women who are so into making sure their portfolio and their finances are, they're not concerned about the things so much, but they are concerned over the top, you know, that there's all these things in a row. And I think it's important for us as women to learn how to balance, and to know, as you say, it's a tool to be able to give to others, to empower other people, to meet goals, to fulfill dreams, to do all kinds of things. Let's talk a little bit about Jesus and financial management. There's so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about money. Are there any that jump out at you that say, you think about them and you're like, I can really relate? Tamara, what?
The borrower is slave to the lender is the one that rings in me constantly, especially after taking Financial Peace and listening to Dave Ramsey talk about it. Now when I look at my student loans, it's like, oh, I hate these chains.
Shackles on my feet, right?
Exactly.
Over to God himself. You can send that straight to heaven.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I think oh no man nothing but love.
But love.
Good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I know for me, as we are on the other side of the recession and rebuilding and restructuring, in the Old Testament, I think it's in 2 Kings, where Elijah has the encounter with the Shunammite woman. And the Shunammite woman returns to her native land after the famine. And when she goes to meet with the king gives her the outright permission to receive all of her land back, as well as all of the income that she would have accrued in the 7 years while she was gone.
Interest, somebody say.
I know.
You're right.
That's a shout right
That
there.
story, that promise is just echoing in my spirit. And I said, God, I am just believing you for total restoration after this recession. And that's something that we have to believe and confess and stand on, because a few years ago I was stressed out. We almost came that close to losing everything, everything. And so to go from that experience where, wow, you're riding on the very top and you have everything and you don't have to ask permission for anything, to oh my God, we can't pay our light bill. Wow, that's a really serious low. And so to now be on the upswing and to know that it was nobody but God, nobody but God. I give him glory for bringing us to this point where we are, but also knowing that we are owed what was taken during that period, and knowing that that's the type of God he is. He does not forget one thing, and that he will bring us back into that period of restoration. So if anything, I want to see us claim that boldly before God and know that he's that type of God that he will restore us fully.
I love that story.
I love that.
I think that was one of the stories I also kind of held on to.
Right. Yes.
After my 2011 time period, or 2001 time period. That's kind of what I held on to.
Right.
And I've seen God.
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen God restore
Praise God.
and do exceeding
Right.
and
Right.
abundant. Because I tithe off of my
That's right.
Absolutely.
my unemployment.
Yeah.
So
So
important.
even while I was unemployed,
Yes.
I was still tithing
Yes.
off of my unemployment just because I knew the importance of that, and I knew what God's word said about that, about tithing, and so that was important for me. And the world, my own family, thought I was crazy
Yes, yes.
because you don't have anything and you're tithing off of unemployment. What are you thinking? But God has shown me that He is faithful to do exactly what He
Yes.
said He would
Right.
do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Every promise is true.
Yes.
Yes,
Every
Every
promise.
promise is true, and
Yes.
when we are faithful with the tithe,
Yes.
oh my gosh,
so
I have seen
important.
Yes.
God do incredible things.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and I have not paid bills and paid my tithe,
Right.
and see God make a way out
Yes.
of no way,
Yes.
and I know we can. I like there's a scripture in Luke where Jesus talks about being able to, if we cannot be faithful with worldly
Yeah.
possessions, how can we handle eternal things?
Right. Right.
Just our ability to be good stewards. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's the difference between a steward and an owner? A steward and an owner.
A steward recognizes that what he possesses is not his,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or what she possesses is not hers. So she does with it what the owner would want her to do with it. That is a steward. An owner owns it and feels like they do. And I think that's where, as we were talking about with tithing, that's a big part of how we view tithing. We realize that we're stewards
Right.
of what God has given us. And we're stewards not just of the 10%, we're stewards of the 100%,
Yes.
right? He has, though, already told us, you know, you just give back the 10% that I've asked of you, and I will open up those windows. And as you said, you have seen Him do that, and I have seen Him do the same thing. The thing that I realized about tithing, because I think a lot of people feel like you're giving your money to church or to a charity or whatever. I think God is using tithe and that money to align your heart with His will,
Yes.
just to align you with Him,
Absolutely.
having nothing to do with money. He just knows how important money is to us
Right, right.
here on this earth, but He has asked us to sacrifice that part to align us, you know, with Him.
That's great.
And that He trusts us too. If He can trust you
Yes.
with this
Right.
Yes.
and to do right by
Yes.
that,
Yes.
then He can trust you to give you more.
Yes.
Because He know you're going to do right with the more.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
but you
Praise
know, if you
God.
got that clenched fist,
Yeah,
With
can't
that.
receive anything.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Burkett says how we use our finances is a testing ground
Yes.
of our true priorities.
That's right.
And so you're right. If God, you know, looks to see, are you willing to know that everything is mine and you're not holding anything so tightly? It's really an issue of putting Him first.
That's right.
Because if anything becomes a little G-O-D in our lives, whether it's money, whether it's our children, anything, He doesn't want anything to come before Him. It's learning how to keep those priorities in check. And it's a matter of us trusting Him. I think trust is the key
Yes.
word right there, that we can trust God, no matter what it looks like, because faith will tell you when you're tithing off of unemployment, you know, when you can't pay the light bill.
Right.
I remember when we couldn't pay the light bill and we lit candles around the house. We were just glad that we were still in the house without the light bill. You know, people driving by thinking we got a great house. It's like, yes, but our lights are off. But God has been so faithful, and I've seen Him do it over the years, and I want that to encourage somebody, because I think sometimes when we get to the end and we see there's absolutely nothing, it's just like the widow with a son, when it's like, I'm getting ready to go make this last
Yes,
little
that's
bit,
right.
and that's it. And me and my
That's it.
son, we're just gonna die.
Right.
But God always shows up.
Yes,
And
He
He
does.
always sends somebody to be able to encourage
Praise
us or to
God.
send a word. And I think we should be encouraged by that. Let's talk just a little bit about how much is enough. You know, that whole thing of, are you a not enough girl? You know, not enough this, not enough that, not enough this, to the point where I guess what I want to talk about is contentment is really what I want to talk about. What do you want to say?
I'm learning. I think through this whole process, you know, after we took financial peace, we really focused on getting our debt down. And it was a lot of discipline. Thank God, December, we will be
Amen.
debt free
Amen.
as far as, you know, the credit cards
Right.
and, you know, all that other debt. The only thing I will have is the student loan payment, and I'm not claiming that for too much longer either. But it was a lot of discipline in that, and I think not being able to go shopping and not being able to go on vacations because your focus is on something different, then you learn what I have now is enough, and you become, or I became rather, very content with what I had. I can't tell you the last time I've been to the mall.
Yeah.
I actually went one day this week to pick up a birthday gift for my father-in-law, but I don't think of it like I used to.
Right.
You know, in the beginning it would be, oh my gosh, I can't do this and I can't do that. But it was worth it. So I think, you know, during that whole process, my priorities shifted. And that wasn't mandatory. You know, the vacations wasn't mandatory. You know, you were focused on one thing and you were thankful for what you had during the process. You were thankful that God still provided, even though, you know, that I have enough to go out and to pay this off, but even in that, he's still providing. You know, the food on the table, and we still have shelter. So yeah, our priorities shifted, and it was good. I learned contentment, and I learned what I had was enough.
Right.
So,
I think that's key.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we get into this I deserve mode. It was like, I worked hard all week, I earned this money, I know I have these bills and we're trying to meet, but I deserve something. And being able to make a sacrifice and to discipline yourself. I think discipline is the word that we don't want to hear, because debt just doesn't disappear, poof, like some berry comes and waves it away.
Oh, we wish.
But it takes a while to get rid of it.
Comes easy.
Exactly. Or we want these if only, you know, statements. Well, if only I could, you know, inherit this money, then I would. Well, the truth is, people who come into large amounts of money end up just as broke as they were before because of their habits. You know, so it's mismanagement. So it's not the amount of money that's the problem. It's how we manage the money that we do have. And I realize if I'm not faithful over this little bit, why should God trust me with anything more? And that I had to learn the hard way. And they know my story about my 12-step program of being a shopaholic. Y'all have to check that out. Not going to the mall and not spending, going on a spending freeze, and realizing that there were a lot of things that I wanted that I just did not need. Not another pair of black shoes.
Not another pair.
The boxes you forgot about.
Exactly. And then I also realized that when I did that, people began to bless me with things, just out of the blue. Things that were just, it was like, you know, God, you're so faithful, because I'm getting something new and I didn't buy anything new, you know, or it's new to me.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, I know two things I think of when I think about your word contentment, or the word contentment. I remember, I think it was one of Pastor's first trips abroad to Africa, and he came back and had the huddle to review with the church what he had experienced and learned. And I remember him making the statement. He said, on your worst day in the United States, you live better than 95% of the world's population. That has stuck in my mind. My bad days, we couldn't pay the light bill, couldn't go to Target and shop to your heart's content. Really? Is that a problem? On your worst day, you are still better than 95% of the world's population. That took me out of myself and put needs and wants in a more global perspective. There are a lot of people that do far greater things than we do with a lot less. And so we have got to learn how to operate in sufficiency in God, as opposed to this operation of I've got to have more money in order to get things done. Another thing that helped me deal with contentment while we were you know, in a season of lack, was learning how to say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And just stopping right there
Yes.
and just breathing that space and believing that he knows my pain and my anxiety, but still his word is true. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So we have to combat it in our mind and then rethink how we understand needs and wants. So
I think that is so important, because one of the things that I learned during my recession, during the time period when I lost my job and was out of work, every year I planned and did these really nice birthday parties for my daughter. And the year that I lost my job, I wasn't able to have a birthday party for her. And so the only thing I could do was to go to McDonald's, pick her up a Happy Meal, and go out to her school and have lunch with her. And she came home from school that day and said, "Mommy, I had the best birthday ever." And automatically I thought to myself, all of the things all I had to do was buy a Happy Meal and go out to the school. That was what she was like, I had the best birthday ever. Because I wasn't working at the time. So we got to spend a whole lot of time together. And that was important for her. So it wasn't about the things, you know, and we equate money and things to being those things that our kids want or what's important, and it's not. It's not.
I think you're right. I think time has so much more value than things. Quality time, kids crave it. Husbands crave it. Quality time. It's just important. As we end this conversation, can you just share maybe one or two things that were key in kind of getting you turning the ship in a direction that was different? And I want somebody to talk about envelopes.
That has been a lifesaver.
So we'll talk a little bit about that, but just try to share just a couple of things, because I want us to end with what are some things that have worked, in order to get us to a different point.
Okay. For us, the envelope system has worked.
Can you explain what it is? Briefly,
Basically, you take your different items that you would have monthly that you would pay, whether it's your house mortgage, student loan bills, food, all of those are itemized. And you can make envelopes for certain things. So right now we have envelopes for groceries. You have envelopes for, what else do we have? Maybe like oil changes, envelope for gas for your cars. And you find out how much you need for those certain items every month.
Budget.
And so you're budgeting per month, and you take an envelope and you write down, say it's going to be gas. So for that month, if you spend $200 in gas, you'll put it in that envelope.
$200 cash.
$200 cash.
Has to be cash.
Has to be cash.
It has to be cash.
And if you don't have it, then you just don't have it. So if you put $300 in for like groceries for the month, and you find yourself at the register and that bill might be $301, then you're looking like, okay, we need to put something back. And I have done that, because you get to the point to where you do avoid swiping, because when you do swipe, you tend to spend more. So it's just a mechanism to, like you said, it's budgeting, and it prohibits you from swiping your card or credit card anywhere you go. So you're actually taking out cash and you're putting it in the envelope, and then when you need it, then you're able to use it. Life-changing. Totally life-changing.
Life-changing.
Yeah, the envelope system has definitely been quite beneficial for my husband and I, especially being newlyweds. We actually went through the class before we got married. We were like in the class. So we got married in October. We started the class in February.
Okay.
So we had actually started our monthly budget, even though we had separate accounts. Once we got married, we joined accounts, because I had a lot of different accounts, because I attempted to do the envelope system through accounts at one point. It didn't work. so many accounts doing so many different things, and it was getting confusing. But the envelope system really worked for us because I'm the saver, my husband's a spender, but he spends a lot on entertainment. So he wants to do the NBA games and the NFL games and going out to comedy. He wants to spend going out and eating out. And I'm like, we can't eat out and have $300 in groceries too. Like, we got to figure out what's important.
Absolutely.
So we have monthly meetings. Like, we sit down and we have monthly budget meetings, and I schedule them. Like, I send a meeting invite and say, this is what time we need to meet, because if I don't, he will never bring it up because it's not as important to him. He knows the benefit, but it's not as important. And I think just being able to have those conversations around money early on in our marriage has kind of eliminated a lot of what a lot of people go through their first year of marriage. So that definitely was one of the things that has helped us. I think for me personally was just the discipline, just being disciplined and knowing what the long-term goal and benefits are versus short-term satisfaction or temporary satisfaction. Because you can go out and buy a $300 purse, but at the end of the day, what is that going to do for you? Is it going to help you meet any of your goals that you really want, those dreams, those things that you aspire to do? So I think the discipline is important as well.
Wow, I'm going to try to keep this brief. There's so many things. First, I want to say good teaching, great teaching makes a big difference. I grew up in church all my life, from, christening to when I graduated from high school and went off to college. But when I came to the Park Church was the first time I was taught biblical financial literacy. So you have got to learn God's way to manage money. So that's number one. Don't try to repeat your same behavior expecting a different result. Sanity all day long. So that's first, get good instruction, and that came about through Arthur Wilson, Pure Money, and then Park Financial and so forth. So that's number one. Secondly, that what has worked for us is managing two different accounts, and I say that with caution, but basically what we have instituted is we have one account for bills, and then we have a second account for our disposable everyday spending. Number one, it gets rid of that tension of, did we pay all the bills? Of course we did. That money is separately allocated. Everything is set up on auto pay and auto draft, so you don't have to worry about it. And then our second account is where we operate daily. So we have to watch that one a little more carefully because you can tend to overspend, but that's made a big difference. A third thing that has truly helped us is giving up that spirit of credit.
Yes.
We haven't talked about it, but those credit cards are a demon, and they will not leave you alone easily. So going through the exercise, probably, years back with Minister Arthur, of cutting up credit cards.
They did that Wednesday night.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And then falling back into the trap. And then, okay, now we're out, and I am never looking back. Never looking back. But that has been major for us. You live on what you make.
Yes.
That's right.
Anything beyond that is falsehood.
That's right.
And so giving up that spirit of credit card has been major for us. And we want to live by the standard, owe no man nothing. We are living by the standard, owe no man nothing but love. To God's glory, I had to purchase a car last month. We wrote a check and paid for it in cash because we want to see God's perfect will in our finances. So be encouraged. Don't give up. Stay his course, and it'll all be fine.
Oh, that is wonderful. I love the envelope system. I actually modified it a bit for myself. I bought a wallet that has multiple slots, and I just have slots for my different categories. I have a miscellaneous, which is a very small amount, and that's miscellaneous and entertainment. Food and groceries, hair, which I only get done when I need my relaxer. I do not get my hair done every 2 weeks because it's too expensive. It's expensive. And so I have those in there, and it does make a very big difference. I always fooled myself, I guess, because I was the most responsible financially in my household. Even though my mom was a saver, she didn't understand money. I had the benefit of both. I understood, and I was a saver to a degree. And so I didn't need a budget or any sort of spending plan. I didn't need Dave Ramsey. I thought I didn't need any of those things. But thankfully, the Lord put in my spirit last year that I did. And it is amazing to me, absolutely amazing to me, how much extra money I found once I started doing a spending plan. I think budget gets the wrong, you know, attitude. Yes, the wrong connotation has the people look at it the wrong way. But it is truly a spending plan. Yeah, truly a spending plan.
I think Dave Ramsey makes the comment of manage your money and don't let your money manage you.
That's it. That's exactly it.
For me, financial peace was a turning point. Because I was one, too, who could cut up the credit cards. But, you know, when you get to the registry, if you have not canceled them, they can look them up. And I realized it's a demon, it's a spirit that's just after me. But what helped me, I think, most was the emergency fund. Because I think, you know, when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're spending, and not looking at what you actually have, when emergencies would come, it was a crisis. I'm in tears over something simple like I need a tire, which shouldn't send me into, you know, craziness. But knowing, you know, the first time something happened and I had that emergency fund, I was like, man, this is wonderful. It's wonderful. And so that for me was just such a shift in what it would feel like to know that, you know, emergencies will come, and when they come, there's this emergency fund that I've had to sacrifice to pull away from other things to put here so that I'm prepared. Because when trouble comes, I want to be able to give God the glory and get through it and not find myself on the edge of insanity. So this has been good. I want to thank you guys for your time. Financial Peace actually is Hold Up the Book. Is a series that we do here at the Park Ministries. It is powerful. I highly recommend it. You're going to say, I can't afford to do financial peace because there is a fee, but I will tell you, you can't afford not to do financial peace. It will make a difference in your life. If you're checking out Wednesday nights Bible study with Minister Arthur Wilson, that is powerful. It's time for us to, as they say, girl, get your money straight. Be blessed.